Welcome to Creator's Edge Studio. I'm Tom Marcoux.
And I'm Jon Colton.
Here at Creator's Edge Studio, we talk about pop culture and things that are fun, and we have a philosophy of teach me something that I can use. So in this episode, we're talking about He-Man, Justice League Doom, and how to write a logline and a pitch. So let's begin with He-Man. Jon, what's your take on He-Man? The new Kevin Smith reinvention, you might say.
Yeah, well, it's definitely the hot topic online right now, and there's a lot of hot takes.
Right.
First, let me say I'm a huge He-Man fan. You know, I was the right age exactly when the toys came out, and also I didn't have access to the cartoon show because my dad was stationed overseas, but we did have the local video rentals, and they had about 5 or 6 episodes of He-Man, which we did tape at some point for ourselves. And I probably watched those till the wheels fell off.
Yeah.
And,
Okay. We're talking about the original He-Man, 1983. You're in the perfect age space to appreciate it. But we have a phrase here. We say cheesy terrific. Would you call this cheesy terrific?
I would absolutely call He-Man cheesy terrific. I think the show was great. It had some great writers on it. One of our faves, J. Michael Straczynski, back in the day, wrote some episodes of the cartoon show. There was an episode where Skeletor was about to fall over a cliff and die.
Okay.
And He-Man reaches out and grabs his hand and saves him. And Skeletor, he was surprised by that. Why did you do that? And He-Man's reply was, I believe that all life has value, even yours. I think he called Skeletor a fiend.
A fiend? Even a fiend like you?
Right. You know, as a kid, I got some of my values from a
From
cartoon
He-Man.
show. I also looked up the meaning of the word fiend. As far as Kevin Smith versus the toxic fandom,
Okay.
I think both sides are right and both sides are wrong. And
Okay, I'm interested in this.
yeah, like a lot of the reports online are saying that there was toxic fans that were trying to sabotage the ratings on Rotten Tomatoes and things like that.
Okay.
And some of the criticism of the show is legitimate. And I think part of the problem is the premise and maybe the marketing. But basically, they were jumping off from the point of continuing the 80s cartoon show.
Right.
And I'm not sure that was the right way to go.
Okay. The detail that caught my attention was there's been some reporting that Kevin Smith and perhaps a producer, they wanted to have real consequences. Here's a big spoiler alert, but my understanding is that in the first episode, Skeletor and He-Man die.
Right. It's kind of surprising to me how often these producers and showrunners underestimate the reaction that you're going to cause when you kill the main character. I remember when I was a kid going to the movies and, oh man, me and all my friends went, we were so excited to watch Transformers, the movie.
Okay.
And Optimus Prime dies in the first 10 minutes.
Stunning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every jaw was was hitting the floor, and they were trying to make way for the new toys.
Right.
The other thing that comes to mind is when DC Comics decided to kill Superman.
Okay.
And a lot of fans were really upset. You know, you don't kill Superman. But it ended up kind of being a publicity stunt. And then, of course, Superman comes back. And then, you know, they did the same thing with Batman in the comic books when they had Bane break his back. And they were like, oh, Batman's paralyzed now. Bruce Wayne will no longer be Batman. This new guy's going to be Batman. And that's the way it is from now on. Well, again, fans were really upset. I see what Kevin Smith was trying to do. As we've talked about when you're writing, one of the key components is asking a lot of questions.
Yes.
And one of the main questions that the good writers always ask themselves is, what is the worst thing that could happen to my hero or my protagonist?
Yes. And since we've written screenplays together, we've asked those questions to each other in terms of what to do and what happens next. And in fact, in this conversation, we're going to get to the conversation about clarity and a deliberate sequence of events for good writing. Here's my question for you at this moment. Is it possible that the people who make the material want to tell a story that many fans just don't want to see.
Where the disconnect comes, it's the Rick Baker observation.
Ah,
This goes back to an interview I heard with Rick Baker where he was talking about working on a Wolfman movie and how just excited. And for those who don't know, Rick Baker is a special effects monster maker, makeup guy, mask maker guru. He did the effects and masks in the original Star Wars. And
yes, including Michael Jackson's music video Thriller. And of
yes,
course, his amazing stuff that he did for American Werewolf in London.
yeah, and all the way to Men in Black and many in between. He was working on the Wolfman remake, and he was talking about how it became apparent to him at some point that not everyone on the set was a fan of the Wolfman. And
Ah,
he really was. He was super excited to be working on Wolfman, but everyone else was there to get a paycheck and do a job.
are you thinking
So,
that maybe Kevin Smith, it was easy for him to kill off these characters because he wasn't
well,
a
if
deep
you do the
fan?
math, you do the math. Kevin Smith was a teenager when He-Man came out.
Oh, okay.
So there's no way that he had that sort of magic love where, you know, He-Man didn't teach him life lessons.
Okay.
That's just not something that would have happened to a teenager.
Gotcha.
It's a little bit of a cheat if you answer the question, well, what's the worst thing that could happen to our character? Well, they could die,
Okay.
right?
We want to focus on clarity and a deliberate sequence of events. John, before we did this recording, we talked about the idea of He-Man versus Justice League. That is, we were talking about the Kevin Smith rendition of He-Man. It's not matching up with what you like about the animated film Justice League Doom. John, you mentioned that watching Kevin Smith's version of He-Man was seeing a bunch of stuff piled together as opposed to having a simple, clear log line, for example, that we'll talk about later in this program. You also mentioned how when you saw Justice League Doom, you could clearly express what is the point, what is the full through line of action. So why don't you share some of those details?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the mark of a great movie is like you can tell somebody else what the movie was about
Mm-hmm.
without having to go into a long, convoluted,
Right. So why
you
don't you
know.
tell us what the essence of Justice League Doom, the animated
Okay.
film?
So first of all, it's from a few years ago. Dwayne McDuffie is the writer, and it is just a grand slam home run.
Ah,
But the plot is Vandal Savage steals Batman's contingency plans for how to deal with all the members of the Justice League
wow.
should they ever turn evil.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, Batman has a way to neutralize everybody
Right.
just in case it ever becomes necessary. Vandal Savage steals those and then starts the Legion of Doom and gives them assignments where they each get to kill the hero that they want to kill using Batman's plans.
From there, what I want to do is go into our section about how to write a log line and a pitch, because here at Creator's Edge Studio, we want to give very succinct, very valuable material. So I'm going to be quoting from my book, Darkest Secrets of Making a Pitch for Film and Television. I've also released it as a course on Udemy. So I'm excited about that. Here is how to write a log line. The idea, and I'm on page 79 of the book, I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to pull out some of the ideas, is that in a log line, you're able to tell us who is the relatable hero. You identify their big want, and then you identify a big obstacle. For example, a classic log line is for the film with Harrison Ford, The Fugitive. Here's how it goes. After being falsely convicted of the murder of his wife, a once prominent surgeon escapes custody to find the real killer and clear his name. So it's clear, it's straightforward. Now I have a different log line here. And once again, we focus on a relatable hero, a big want, and a big obstacle. So here's a different log line. Susan is a caring grammar school teacher who ends up with a flash drive of material impacting national security. Chased by enemy agents, she wants to protect her son, survive, and get the flash drive to General Hatley, her ex-husband's father.
That sounds like a good movie. What's it called?
I wrote it as an example for the book. I don't have a name for it yet, but I'm glad that you find it to work. And that's a log line. So a log line is a tool that people use in the film industry. It's part of a pitch. You don't walk into the conversation saying, here's the log line. In a pitch, what you do is you express the story in few words. You also make sure that you don't get all convoluted and you talk too much about peripheral details. You just let people know who's the hero, what do they want, what is blocking their way, and what horrible outcome happens if they don't succeed. So now, what are you working on?
Well, this week I finished a page of Paul Bunyan versus Dracula that I was really struggling with for a while. And I had to redraw the whole page 3 times.
Wow.
And so basically it's a drawing of Dracula as a wolfman type creature.
Hmm.
And he's howling in front of a full moon.
Right.
And I wanted to have an interesting angle. I wanted to play with the shadows and do something that was going to inspire a little bit of dread, a little bit of trepidation,
Hmm.
and kind of create that feeling. It got me back to a basic art lesson. And it's kind of the same principle that we talked about with the log line,
Okay.
in that you have to have something that is simple, straight through, and communicates easily what the story is about. It reflects in the visual world as well. And one
Right.
of the lessons I remembered from art school was that if you can draw a silhouette of your scene
Hmm.
and it communicates what is happening, then it works.
Ah,
People can read it visually, they can understand what is happening.
I'll toss in that I'm working on the fourth novel in Generally Storm. I've already got the trilogy out there. Very excited about it being out there and being read. And I am excited to work on the fourth novel. So, as we come to the close, we notice that we have talked about Justice League Doom, He-Man, and even how to write a log line, which is part of a pitch.
Wow, someone made it all the way to the end. Hey, you might as well hit the subscribe button while you're here.
Please, yeah, cool.